That's exactly what I was just gonna say. What's your conversation?
Yeah, but I was. That way, if I. All right, 6 o'clock, call meeting to order. Christina, you have the roll.
Yep.
You can dispense with the pledge unless there's somebody has an objection. Hearing no objections, we'll move to approval of this evening's agenda.
Motion to approve this evening's agenda.
Motion. Second. Dawn has the second.
Okay,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Right into old business.
I don't have anything on the PER report,
Just that the water tower got on it, or will be on it.
will be on it, yeah. No updates from Woodson at this moment. Tim is, on some off and Mike's been gone too, so.
Okay.
Might have some more for you guys in November's meeting.
Good enough. The library. I see wonderful things at the library. Yeah.
Yeah, the steps are done. Hand railing is in. All the bushes are gone. Looks good.
Does look sharp.
I think we're gonna take out. Where we put black dirt and seeded it, I think we're actually gonna take that out and we're gonna go with what we're gonna call a rock garden. For ease of maintenance in that area. We put some 1.5-inch rock in there and then they can. Put some potted plants if they want or something.
Okay.
So that'll be a change. I don't know if we'll get that for sure yet this year with the way the weather looks like it's gonna turn, but
Hush.
we'll be doing that.
FEMA.
About them. We're almost done with the gravel roads. I have until 1st of January to finalize the report to the feds. But I think we'll be done by first part of November, by at least the council meeting. I should have that report, I'm thinking.
Yep.
And to order a little bit more material from Lossings, but we should be just about done.
I'll be glad of that.
Yeah. Maybe 2 birds tonight.
If you only get a few more pegs in there, it's a couple of pegs, they break all the time.
I know, and then I need them, yeah.
And the co-op's property.
I got a little more communication from our attorney. He was gone for a short time frame, and that's why there was a little bit of a breakdown, but. There's gonna be a corrective deed coming from the state. There was a couple of items that the attorney noticed that was missed. And that'll come probably by the council meeting. And then we can start the sale to the co-op. So the attorney noticed a couple of things that were not missed by the state. And he wanted to make sure that that was noted in the deed so that there was nothing missed.
Okay. Brad.
So the restoration fundraising is going well. I showed you guys that we did get $1,000 from Operation Roundup. Rob Ingersoll is gonna attend on behalf of the project on Wednesday because I've got a conflict, but I've also attended Upper Red Lake area associations meeting this month as well, and they too awarded the project $1,000. So that's 1,000 from Roundup, 1,000 from Red Lake, 2,000 committed from the city, a potential, up to $3,000 match from the chamber. So if that all totals up, that's like $9,000 right there of the 11 we need. So I don't see it being a problem for us to hit that 11,000 by my March 1st goal. I still need to, address the public, donation request. I haven't sent that out to area businesses yet, but, Jennifer Parker also said that when I get that done, she's gonna do a follow-up, article in the newspaper too, in the American. So hopefully the, the energy that's in there will continue.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. I got a lot of really good ideas from some chamber members the last month when they committed that 3,000, of making some type of commitment to the donor, like, having their name on like a patio block on the corner or something to that extent. And, they're all really great ideas, but, we don't really have a plan in place for the landscaping at this point. But I guess if the donations exceed the goal and we have some ability to do that, we could do some type of, thank you wall for the
Sure.
community, so that they're, who pledged what, that kind of thing, like we did for the beach. Just haven't worked out any details yet, and they're just ideas bouncing around right now,
Okay.
so.
Anything else on that? No. The grader.
So the grader, I did get contacted by a representative from Ziegler. They're one of the reps that work with us specifically. They're working obviously as the interim between us and the county, because the county is using what we're paying as trade-in, so they can buy the other one. And like I reported at one of the meetings, this could be December before they take possession, which puts our possession transaction a little later as well. When I spoke to the gentleman from Ziegler today, he thought it was gonna be closer to the first of the year. One of the reasons for that is the county is waiting on some additional equipment that's going on their new grader, snow equipment.
Sure.
And they won't take full, delivery on the unit until everything is in, and that snow equipment is coming from a different vendor than CAT. My hope is that it'll all transition really quick, very seamlessly, but when we get to that point and that money exchanges, I'm gonna have some final paperwork from, small cities, from the feds that I have to have the city approve and report, on bid numbers, make, model, all that. So I'm hoping I get everything done before I go on my leave. If not, there'll be a transition period there. I'll try to get it done by the 1st of January. We'll just have to wait and see where that delivery is from the county.
Well, I can understand they don't want to get rid of theirs until they have their new stuff in place.
Yeah, and that's just the way they're doing it. So we are pretty much at the mercy of when that happens for them.
Sure. What do you think, Mike? Old one got just enough?
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping it's got enough left in it. You see.
We know where this grader is coming from exactly?
Beltrami County Highway Department.
No, I mean, is it? Do you know where the home is for this grader? I mean,
Yeah, it's in Bemidji.
I was just wondering if it was one that was on, like. If it graded like the roads with chloride on it, a lot, or
It's been all over the place. It's just like every other one. They've had it. It was up here for a while. at the O'Brien shop, and it's back down there because one went out or whatever, so it's done a bit of everything, but it's in good shape. I have pictures and stuff of it if you need to see it. I think we went through them at one point in time.
I was just thinking about, you know, what Corey does to them, and this came up in my mind, and I thought I'd ask,
Sure.
so. Okay,
And did you mention an anticipated completion date or estimated?
The communication from the county engineer is sometime in December. However, because of what I heard today with delivery of snow equipment going onto their new grader, it could push into January.
Anything else on the grader? Item G,
So the board asked for this to be back on the work session agenda to discuss further from September's meeting, and I guess I yield it to the council as to where the discussion wants to continue.
well, everybody do their homework?
well.
I'm looking.
I was kind of looking at you through the corner of my eye. So I was actually talking to Christina about this today. And we didn't really come up with anything. I mean, but it's kind of like I think when we have these committee meetings, you know, like that, I think we need to raise the grade on us. Because,
Okay,
okay, so for instance, tomorrow we were supposed to have a personnel committee meeting from 1 to 4. Well, somebody can't be there, one of our,
Mhm.
so now that's not gonna happen. So now we're doing Friday, well. So for the department heads, they're still working their regular jobs. And doing their work. And they're getting paid. So for the council members to take off their regular job. And not get paid for it. It's tough. Like yesterday, for tomorrow, I took off the whole afternoon for this meeting. And I'm not getting paid. Because we were gonna have this and all of a sudden, and then we found out that somebody can't be there. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, as Christine says it, you know. So I have to work, I had to kind of move people around so I could be there for Friday morning. To be, you know.
Mhm.
To make it work. So, because we have to have this meeting. You know. So it costs us money, it costs money to be involved in this stuff. And for $50 a meeting, it's just, it's not. Not enough compensation, I don't think. So that's my personal opinion.
Well, that's fair, that's what we're talking about.
Well, I was supposed to bring it forward to the council.
Yeah, absolutely. Ron, you got a thought? You look like you have a thought. I don't know if
It's the same thought I had last work session when we discussed this, because I didn't realize we had meetings that, you know, went into the 3 hour marks. That's an education for me, but
That was definitely, you know, a 1-0, though,
yeah.
I can honestly say that was. a
But
1-0.
is there an alternative to raising the rate? Having specifically scheduling shorter meetings? That's,
I think in general, we try to keep them to an hour. You know, as I explained to Dawn this afternoon, this particular committee that is taking up additional time is a committee that we as staff and department heads and the board can't really pinpoint when the meetings are gonna happen. It's not like a council or a work session meeting. It's not really even a financial committee meeting. It happens when it needs to because of the nature of the committee itself. And sometimes the concepts, ideas, and decisions that have to be made take time. And we have really good input from everybody that's in that committee. This particular situation that Don is referring to this week, we have one committee member that can't come, and in my opinion, that is a detriment to the four of us, especially in the nature of that committee. So I don't like to be the person that is responsible for relaying opinions and decisions from another committee member to a group. Because my translation of what somebody might tell me may not necessarily be that of the person that's saying it. So personnel in my mind is something that's really important that every committee member that's on it be in attendance to. So we're doing the best we can with the time we have, but we have a lot of opposing ideas in that NIC group. We learn a lot from each other, but we also need to all be present in order for us to come forward to the board with a sound financial and good decision for the full board to approve. So it's kind of a one-off. I mean, there's, you know, that last September meeting that was 3 hours was totally out of sorts. But there was a lot of decision. I mean, I can't imagine there aren't union negotiations in larger cities that are shorter than that or longer, you know, not longer. So, you know, being on the committee is a commitment. You know, we're coming up to January. If that one committee needs to have a rotated board member, then maybe that is the benefit to Dawn. It's very hard to, you know, stop something that you're so forward and so involved in though, but you know, we have to look out for us as a team too, not just our staff members. Those are my points. I mean, I don't want to speak for Mike and I don't want to speak for Shonda. And I definitely don't want to speak for Don and as it pertains to a full group. But I think
Well, I
historically,
know-
committee member meetings are not that long.
No. And that's the majority of, or to reword this so that one committee is. Or to put a time limit on it.
You guys do.
I don't see that being a benefit. To the committees as a whole. Putting a time constraint on a meeting because.
Well, nor is extending an increase in pay.
Correct.
If the
And that's-
meeting goes, or if the meeting went over an hour, it's, you know, because it can go both ways. I mean, we try really hard to schedule these meetings so we don't have overtime that we're paying out as well. It's not easy when it's like the liquor store, for instance, in this particular situation, they don't have a lot of overlap. We just went through a reorganization of their staffing to begin with, so we would not have that. And that we would have a true representation of their wages and their payroll. And I know Mike is in the same boat, he still has work to do too, so we all have our own work to bring to the committee, but yet also our own work that we have to do outside of it. We just have to be more efficient in my mind. I mean, unless other board members that have been to other meetings, other types of committees have alternative thoughts.
No, I guess I don't, but my situation's a little unique also.
Yeah,
In that I can take the time when I need to take the time because it's my business. When I'm there, I'm there. I'm not.
And-
does it come back to bite me sometimes? Yeah. It does, but
And I also try to accommodate as much as possible, and I really enjoy being on these boards.
yes,
So, and I.
yeah,
And I have accommodated pretty well
I think you have.
to fit in mornings, afternoons, evenings, whatever.
I guess I just don't think that we need to increase the meeting wages at this time. Because I think that one meeting was
definitely one off.
I hope it was a fluke.
Because that you have to sit down and read up on this stuff before you go to the meetings. So you have to have knowledge of what's going on, so it's not just a 20-minute, half-hour meeting beforehand, so you have to, so it's not,
Right.
it's not, you know that.
Yeah, you shouldn't be trying to build the ship at sea.
Exactly. So it's not like you're walking in there blind, you have to, so you have to kind of follow what's going on. And so, like your financial meetings,
Yep.
so. So I was just, if we should get we should be able to get compensated for more of our time. For this, it's not just being on a personnel committee, I think, for.
Okay.
All of them. I mean, it costs a lot of money to. Everything's going up, and it costs money to live.
Lori? Thoughts?
Um.
I'm gonna ask you too.
I guess I would look at it from a budget standpoint myself. I think about as many meetings that Nick attends, you attend, and what that looks like in our budget, and I just think that right now that's a little over what we could, or what we should.
Okay.
For money.
I guess we did just raise them, 2 years ago, but
I'm not wrong.
It was updated in November of 21, but 22 was the first year it was
year.
effective, so there's only been a pay raise as of
this,
for all of 22 and now 23, so two.
but I can see the frustration where Don's coming from, because he does have the most out of all of us, I think.
I would say if you wanted to entertain any additional type of language to the ordinance, and this could be a slippery slope, is to
Very.
put some type of clause in there that states that if the meeting runs more than 2 hours, that the board member would be compensated with X amount. But now you're being held to start trying to stay within a guideline that you cannot foresee. I mean, we try really hard just to keep the work sessions under 2 hours, and the council meetings are typically an hour. Unless there's something big going on. So I mean, if we're being efficient as a team, staff and board members, we should be able to complete our work within under 2 hours.
I guess I'm not for bringing this to a regular council meeting to have a vote. But if the rest of the council feels that we should have a formal vote on this again with changes, then so be it.
Well, I would need some guidance to amend the ordinance, because this is not a one-off. It's not set by resolution, it's set by ordinance.
I think Christina's, mentioned the only other option, which is to increase, the rate for additional hours. But that still requires amending the ordinance.
That's true.
So is it that much difference if you increase the rate to begin with, or that, and we have to have a public reading, and that's a big process.
It is.
So those are the options: increase the rate, increase the number of hours, or decide the status quo and continue as we are now.
But everybody that works for the city gets a raise every year.
Agreed, but you're not staff. You're
I
elected
know it's not
officials.
staff.
Yeah,
I understand we're not staff.
yeah.
I'm just saying, most people that work at a full-time job or even a part-time job
Mhm.
get a raise every year. They get compensated for work. But that's not where I'm going with this.
Okay,
That wasn't where I was going, but,
okay.
and that's not what my ask is. My ask was that to be dedicated to what we do here,
Mhm.
that we should get compensated for time that we spent doing it for these meetings. That's what I'm asking. And I don't think it's gonna throw the budget off that. I don't think we'd really raise the budget that much to, what do we have? 6, 8 meetings a year. So probably for each one. So you're talking,
Well, what would you like to see it up to? What do you have in your mind?
well, I was thinking we should raise it to $75 for the meeting.
But that's what you get. That's what you get paid for the actual council meetings. So are you saying that the value for a committee meeting is the same as what a council meeting is? Because I don't think that the ordinance has ever been, has set up. I think the ordinance has always differentiated those valuations. So I guess what I'm asking you is, do you see the value of both being weighted the same? You get $75 for your meetings right now,
Yeah, that's what I'm.
for your work session, for your work sessions and your council meetings.
For the boards, everybody on the same amount of committees, or is that just how you
No,
want to
and
be on a
that's
committee?
why I also think it could potentially be a slippery slope too, because although time and what you're available and what board meetings you're interested in sitting on can fluctuate from year to year, there may be more of an interest to say, hey, I'm gonna be on the meeting that's gonna take the longest. If we added more money to it, I don't know.
And it's not, and don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
it's not this council necessarily that we're talking about, you're talking about, we're not all gonna be sitting here forever. There's gonna be
Yeah,
others to come after. And that's where I think, I guess I feel that, right now, probably not the best time to do it. That is my thought on it. I think it needs to be, I think we just need to leave it alone, but. If there's something else, I mean, if we need to get Dawn off, if we need to get you off a committee or two, so that there's less, so you have easier planning. There's some committees I know I can't, shouldn't sit on.
So, we talked about that today too. Just, we were kind of hitting the high points of some things today. And we're having a tough time, we've had a tough time filling these seats with everybody's full-time jobs. That's why I ended up being on so many committees, because I had the time and the availability. But it's,
Then the rest of us probably need to pick up a little of your slack.
mhm. Time has changed since you originally
Correct.
put yourself on those and people change their jobs and everything to that extent too. So removing one from your workload and adding it to someone else's is a better balance than the alternative.
well, if you just want to leave it alone, then so be it. And just whatever you,
Well, I think that's kind of the feeling I'm getting from the rest of the council too.
whatever works.
So at this time, Christina, that guidance to update or amend the ordinance, I would say no. Without taking formal votes, yeah,
Right, am I getting the head nod from everybody? I can take this off the agenda, or it's a dead conversation.
Well, I would be in agreement of resolving it in a way that doesn't involve the ordinance.
To me, that's a redistribution of committee representation.
correct.
Explore something else. That's a tough thing to do.
And what I want the board members also to understand is one of the main reason there's council representation is so that you guys have a voice in what's discussed, because unilaterally it should not be making those decisions, and a committee should not be making those decisions. If that committee is made up of the majority of your department heads, then the public's gonna start questioning who's running the city. Okay? So if you're not there, of which I don't prefer to have a committee without a representation of the board, that's when we run into a jam.
Correct.
And I've been there before, and it isn't a pretty, representation from the public. Committees are there to make recommendations so that council can weigh those decisions
And
and make
say,
a decision after that and save time in the
Time.
long run. So we're not here till 1 AM as a work session, because that's happened a long time ago.
yes, it did. But yeah, I think you're receiving the head nod from the majority of the council.
Okay.
At this time, though, would we like to? When do we want to redo committee? I mean,
I'll have
January?
it at the work session in November, because you won't have a work session in December. And that will just be for consideration. Typically, those get aligned at the first January meeting
Uh-huh,
of the year. You'll designate your engineer, you'll designate your, publication, you'll designate your vice mayor and so forth. So that'll happen in your first meeting in January.
so November, so on the November meeting, we can.
I can give you a draft and people can, say yes or no, if they want to get off or move around at
Oh,
that
yeah.
point, and then that'll save you less time in the January meeting.
A lot of the committees, you don't hardly ever meet, like the liquor committee, we've only met,
Couple of times,
you know,
yeah, when really big decisions are
we've
happening.
only met twice since I've been on the board,
Yep,
or on the, on the council. And that was just this fall.
And most of that came when Shonda was given most of the. A little more control down there to. Kind of run,
yeah, but it's more like
but.
the cannabis, the THC stuff came into
Mhm.
play, and those are decisions that you want feedback from. You also, that's why the committee thing is a double-edged sword. You gotta take your staff and your department heads doing their job and, knowing that what they're doing is what we're paying them to do, and the recommendations they're making are in the best interest of their staff as well as the city. I mean, the board has the final vote always, but it's a safety feature in some cases for the public. So that unilateral decision-making isn't happening.
Right. We don't need to discuss what kind of burgers we're having.
Unless they're delivering.
I mean, you can use the golf board as an example, Misty's only been in that role for 2
Correct.
years. She's still pretty new, but you can tell a huge difference on her decision-making and her authority and her confidence as a second-year golf director versus the first year. She knows where her authority lies and what she can do in the decisions, and you can see that in the golf board meeting. But again, she also realizes that the board is there for, you're my sounding board. That's what it's for, right? Personnel committees, just a little bit different.
So we've got a plan. So, of sorts,
Sort, sounds like.
we can move on to
Yes.
the end of the November. Meeting, everybody take a good look at what committees you're on now. Thank you, John.
Thanks for your time.
Page updates.
Max, I put that back on the agenda because of a recent chamber meeting. It sounds like there has not been a whole lot of movement in that,
It kind of stalled.
in that cohort that was, in charge of doing it. That money is still secure. I really thought it was important for the council to understand that it is stalled, and a lot of that is the costs involved with what the expectation of that stage is going to look like. Dwight Kelvig said in a chamber meeting he's just baffled at how expensive things are, and if we want to do it right and we want to do it correctly, we should do it the way it was planned, my opinion, but
You also need a head. That's my.
there hasn't
opinion.
been any movement on it, and I thought, in my opinion, I thought that was still going on outside the realm of the council and my knowledge, but it doesn't sound like Jake Lean or Dwight or Mike and yourself have done or had any conversations since it was agreed upon that this is where it was gonna go, and this is what we wanted to do, and this is how much it was gonna cost. I think that's where the brakes got put on.
And then it became the. Who's in charge of fundraising for what, I think, and I don't think anybody has a clue, or there's no clear
Hmm,
who's in charge.
That's what was mentioned last time, that they just,
When I had brought this up before, that I had had side conversations with Mr. Calvig and
oh,
Mr. Lee and Richard.
so what is their interpretation of who's the fundraiser?
Well, I think it's everyone's interpretation that it's somebody else's. We have our interpretation of our signed agreement. With everyone that states that the city is. Willing to donate the land. And I think that that's where the city's responsibility ultimately
Stopped,
kind of comes to a stop, other than the placement.
sure.
Where it works best for our maintenance department to maintain said stage.
Mhm.
And after that, I don't. We could go, you and you can point to somebody and they can point back to me. But we could do that all night, but I'll be honest with you, I honestly think that if we want to get something done, like with the stage, if the city wants it. We need a head of this project, that somebody to spearhead the rest of the funds. Because
I assumed Calvin and Lee were doing that.
And that's where and what happens when we assume.
Well, that was my interpretation of the agreement, but
And
yeah, again, wow.
I think that's what all of us kind of thought. I mean,
that is,
it was being presented to us that they had this and that this is what they wanted
Right.
to do. And we did our thing of, like Max said, the land and determining location and everything. And then somehow I think that, other people thought that we were supposed to take the whole thing over or something, and that's just
We have
not where
our-
it's at.
memorandum of understanding.
Right. Right,
In case anyone wants to refresh their memory.
I remember
I
that.
remember.
yeah. I could have put that in the agenda. I didn't even think about that, you guys. Sorry about that, but yeah,
So
okay,
I am guilty also of assuming someone else was going to be fundraising, because we knew this was half or roughly half of what they needed.
I think they went into it
Yeah.
thinking that was gonna be enough though. And then they got their quotes back, Max, and they realized they were only halfway there.
Correct. And
Yeah.
that's when we assumed that somebody was gonna do some awesome fundraising and we'll make this, it'll be no problem. And nobody did any fundraising.
Hmm,
And the
So
price of
we're-
materials were way up high.
And so the brakes are on. And if we want to invite everybody back to the table to say, okay, what more do you need from the city to make this happen? And
Then we can just say, we've
What-
done this.
maybe not what more do you need from us, but how can we help facilitate it? Without putting Mike's crew on the hook.
yeah, number 4 is, or 5 is cohort will apply for grant funding for the project. That's the cohort.
So everybody assumed the other guy was doing it.
Well, maybe we need to invite all parties for a small committee meeting.
And
I mean, I would entertain, since it's going to be off season here, that you guys get together with Calvin and Lean.
you see, and it says cohort. Meaning cohort,
Mhm, mhm.
but doesn't say that over here.
So despite, this, we need to go this way, right?
If you want to move forward with it, and that's why, when I brought it initially a couple months back,
Mhm.
that's kind of what I was trying to get across was, this isn't going in place. Not the way this is.
Then maybe we should invite them to And get that, maybe just push it forward, like, hey,
You know, it could be,
Here's-
it
here's
could
our-
literally be as easy as saying, hey, please come to the next work session. They can everybody could fundraise or do the grant writing process. I have no idea how any of that works.
I think the 4 people on that sheet should just meet first.
Perfect.
So that's what it says. That's what was agreed upon. A lot more can get done with less people.
So. Mike,
I don't think my name's on that sheet.
Yes, it is.
and it's signed.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Would you like me to email you?
Yeah, I guess I got you have a copy of that, huh?
Chris probably snuck that one in on you. No, I agree, and,
Yeah, whatever works for you, Max,
okay,
let me know.
and I'll speak with Dwight and Jake.
Is it our
Good enough?
opinions that we want to avoid the city being overly involved or taking it over?
That would be correct,
Yeah,
sir.
we're doing so much. I would be of the opinion that
Be of the opinion that we are not,
this should be done by citizens before you.
Yeah.
however they want it, they got the chamber.
Others, if
Yeah.
I go on the property, we're gonna regulate things. So that-
Well, it'll ultimately be insured by the city because it'll be on city's property, that type of thing too. Electricity, the whole 9 yards. It's just, you know, if you want community involvement, you gotta have community started. And I think one of the reasons to get the city involved is A, it's on city property. B, it can be a tax write-off for anybody's donations because we're a governing entity. So just like the beach. You know,
It's a matter of,
it was almost completely created on donations and grants, so it can happen, it's just the train can't stop. Train's gotta keep on going until it's done, and the train came to the station and didn't leave to the next, to the next location.
it's fresh out of gold.
It's frustrating. Yeah. I mean, I would encourage the parties on the cohort to meet separately and say, how are we gonna start over? How are we gonna keep this going? I had heard that some of the parties made the donation towards the stage were like, what's going on?
They are.
So. You got my money. I got nothing to show for it.
I'd probably like to see it before they move on to the next stage of life.
The next page. No fun.
But, leave it to you.
I saw it was written there for me, and then they just gave it to me on a platter.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. We are done with that.
All right.
New business.
Business. Oopsie. Okay, one of my budgeting roles is to involve the council in the special revenue funds and the budgeting process for that. So just like last year, I'm bringing those to everybody for review. So I'm just gonna go through a couple of these fairly quickly and point out a couple of high points. And we'll ask for questions as you go through it. So the first fund is the cemetery fund. Everybody knows the cemetery doesn't make a lot of money. It gets supported by the liquor store and in the general fund. And Brian, you're early.
Everything okay?
It's been a long day for you? Do you want to move forward to Brian, so?
We-
Before I
it's
even
fine.
start with this?
No,
You're
steady
good?
on.
Okay, all right. Where am I at? Okay, so, cemetery revenue budget for 24. I guess the only new thing that I am budgeting for in revenue is, I allocated $2,100 from the perpetual care fund into its revenue to, show that it's not going to bleed. We have not made a ton of money on lot revenues this year at all. And we have no idea what that's gonna happen from year to year, but we're only at not even $200 of our $1,700 budget, so we're right now, as you guys have seen in the fund balance report, the cemetery fund is in a negative cash balance. So next year, I'm planning to do a perpetual care transfer to its operating fund to make up for that. It'll probably be the last transfer I recommend making. We'll just see how 24 is going in terms of revenues if it's needed, but I'm budgeting for it as an operational, just so that you can see that it'll cash flow its expenses, which is the second page of the report. Any questions?
No, not on that.
Okay. Forward on to Pine Tree Park. Now, on an operational standpoint for this year, the revenue and the expenditures for Pine Tree Park obviously look a little skewed, and that was due in part to the purchase of the new pieces of equipment. It shows it in this year's expenses, but it truly isn't something that we planned for, so it may look like the budget is blown. But next year we won't have that. Go back into the revenues. I'm not sure if you guys are even looking at that or on the big page, because that's. We are still expecting an $11,000 county support. We're planning the same amount of camping revenues. Right now, we're a little bit short from last year, but this is only through the first week of October. And typically, towards the end of the year, we start getting more for next year's Memorial Weekend. Our friends that come and fill our campground up for Memorial Weekend, we usually see part of their deposits in December, so I expect the revenues to be even with this year. Next year's notes on expenses. Mike is planning to do a little bit of more work at the beach. Keep in mind, this is also the beach, not just the campground. We need to put gutters on the pavilion that was built, put some drain spouts and drain tile down as well to prevent erosion from the rain that we get out there. Otherwise, I think most of the remaining budget is very close to this year. Mike, you stop me if I say something on yours.
You're good.
Okay. Fast forward to water and wastewater. Basically budgeting exactly as 23 for revenues. If I can skip to the expenses. Shoot. That's doing that. We now have the debt for the facility planned out in this budget. So in addition to its water tower bond and interest, we now have the facilities responsibility of debt in next year's budget. Otherwise, there isn't a whole lot of changes to this budget either. We lowered the electricity budget because things are a lot better now that we've had some maintenance done on some of the lifts, and not the lift stations. What did we do on the electricity again?
I'm talking the water
On
plant.
the water plant. Yeah,
Oh,
I mean, we're only at $8,000. We're not using nearly the electricity. We did
Yeah.
some streamlining this
Yeah, we
last year.
sorted some things out and that kind of revamped a little bit here and there, and it seems to have helped.
Right. Before, I point on to that, anticipated loss at the bottom of the expense page, I just want to go over the, rate study that is on the next page. So as you might remember from last year, these rate studies are a guide. We basically take the number of connections we have, the amount of water usage pumped and sold in the previous year, and figure out based on our base fees if our makeup for the remaining water per thousand that we're charging the right volume. And this is showing that we're way below what we should be based on the operating budget that we have expected. But what I should point out is that in 23, when we were doing this, we were in the same boat. Okay, it was still somewhere around 750 in terms of a volume that the rate study was expecting. And there's an amount of unaccounted for water in this template that we use to figure out if our budget is online, that we as a city still need to narrow in for. Some of the things that end up with the unaccounted water is, sorry, Brian, our fire departments pumped water for, you know, the fire engines and the tankers, blowing out the hydrants periodically every year. And, you know,
The occasional water truck. For
Well-
gravel roads or road construction stuff.
Yep.
or-
and we can't even use this formula for the year we're in, where we had the issue when we had the water tower serviced 2 months ago, because we're using this guide off of 22's numbers, not 23's. It's not realistic to do so because we use the whole year. I am not recommending that we increase volume or base rates for 24 yet. I think we're okay. I think the revenue that we're getting is still gonna be all right based upon the depreciation that we've been budgeting for in the water department. Because if you skip forward to wastewater, we're right in line. As a matter of fact, in wastewater, we're making money. It has a smaller revenue and expenditure budget, but we still have a fairly decent budget for wastewater, and that too has the same amount of variables in a rate study that causes the numbers to be skewed, because we have intrusion, you know, we irrigate, there's all kinds of stuff that are unaccounted for. But the revenue budget for wastewater, literally the same as 23. Again, the only difference is the facility debt and like water, probably payroll. Otherwise, very close to the same year's budget. Maybe a % increase. Any questions so far?
And our last increase of base rates and stuff was,
It was effective 22, agreed upon in 21. And that was when we increased the residential, the multi-family unit per unit base rate to be the same as residential. It was $10, it's
right,
now 18. And we matched the volume rate of sewer to water, so they weren't different. So 0.068.
okay, cause that's, I'm just remembering just getting on the council
Mhm.
and there hadn't been an increase, or there hadn't been an increase for like 10 years or whatever that was, and then all of a sudden.
We
decided
increased it,
to-
we did increase it, and I
And
believe
a lot
it
of
was
people.
18. We increased the base rates from 15 to 18 for residential. Commercial went up and the volume went up.
I'm just making sure that we're not
Yep,
on track to do something crazy like that again.
and if you may recall, also, when we had this conversation last year, no one was in favor of raising water rates
Right.
because we had just done it in 22. I think we need to give this project, now that the facility is done, a full year of capacity and debt operating wise. So we know what a true operating and maintenance budget for water and wastewater are in that facility. Because we're probably gonna see a decrease in electricity and utilities going forward because it's more efficient. I mean, we talked about the propane use
Yes.
alone when we did the finance budget for the general fund, and that echoes into these two budgets too.
Yeah.
So I know it's a little roll of the dice, but I just want to play out 23 and see where we're at, or excuse me, 24 and see where we're at.
And that's, I'm all in favor of it, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows, this is what
Right,
that's what we're doing.
right. Any questions? Concerns? Am I going too fast?
Nope.
Okay. Then I'm gonna move forward into liquor. Shonda and I worked her budget. There was a couple of updates since we originally did our budget, and that was to add THC beverages in the off sale. We added a $9,000 annual revenue in that category because it was a new category, so of course we had to have an offset. So that's in the expenses as well. One of the changes were in the expenses is that we increased the transfer to the golf course from $5,000 to $10,000 to compensate for not levying for the golf debt. And for the fact that the golf course was doing better in sales and could float its debt more than it could last year or the year before that. It's $1.8 million. It's a big budget. But as you can see in the last 2 years, we're growing it, 200,000-300,000 each year.
Right.
Yep. I can remember not too long ago when Shonda said one of her goal was to hit $1 million in revenue. We're almost at 2. That's crazy. Moving forward to golf course. This was reviewed by the board recently in a September meeting. We added the reimbursement line that's highlighted for the sale of the golf court carts, which Misty had reported to you guys at last meeting. She sold 3 of them. It took her less than a week. So that money is going to stay in that fund to float the debt of 3 new or almost new electric carts, which are shown on which line in the golf debt. It's highlighted on the second page. And we got those for $5,100 each, and they're 2018 carts. One of the reasons for those of you that are on the golf board that they went with the 18s, Misty said, instead of the 19s, was that the 18s were better. They had less hours use than the 19s that they had an option of picking from. And Versatile, where we're getting them from, recommended she pick up those instead. That of course made that anticipated loss for the golf course on their budget a little higher than what we originally had without the golf carts purchase, but that's still $24,000 less than the anticipated loss for 23, and they're not there. So the golf board did have a conversation regarding play and membership sold. This revenue budget does account for not increasing the membership costs to our members in 24, but doing an increase in power cart rental. Did I say that right, guys?
Correct.
No, and an increase in green fees, or no? Just cart rental. just cart rental.
The thing with the green fees was with the school or wasn't there a?
There was
conversation?
an agreement to add a school membership, which is completely new, completely
Yep.
different, not even accounted for in this membership revenue. Anyway, so yeah, that Club Caddy, software that Misty has now out there has really been able to help get a true understanding of rounds played, rental, how much like our membership cost per round. Last year when I did this based off of 22's numbers, it wasn't real true, and you could see in the middle of this page on the right hand side, the membership cost per round is $18.44, which is really right in line with what we charge somebody walking on, which is great. Based upon the number of rounds that our members are playing and how much revenue we take in. That's good. That's good. And that's my special revenue report. Hopefully I didn't forget anything. Questions, concerns,
I don't at this time.
comments? Okay. Moving forward. In the agenda, then that's the last thing I wanted to show everybody. Get my paperwork back on what I'm doing. Was I was redoing my debt schedule. Because I had a visit from Deed on. Sorry, guys. On the demolition debt. Because that payment is gonna start in 24, and that's that very new line on the bottom of the page. In the salmon color there. Which is gonna be coming out of 250's cash. For 75, 78, 90. I needed to report on that, but what I noticed by doing that and adding it to it is that in the bottom right hand corner, I've got property tax levy history. Starting back to 2020. The number I had certified in 2023 in this box when we did our presentation in September was incorrect. It was a lower number. It was not the number that was adopted and certified for 23. By updating that number to 373,941, my calculation now says that our increase over 24 is actually 8.45%, not 11. So that should make everybody feel great.
Yeah.
Because it's not double digits. No, I was started with a truth and taxation presentation, and I have another separate calculation in the
that's
document, and I'm like,
Actually,
3%, I don't understand this, so I went back in here,
better time.
sure enough, I found out I made a mistake.
6.5.
Thanks, Don.
Well.
We're not gonna, don't worry about it.
Okay.
Forget it. Just forget I even opened the mouth.
Oh, all right, well, it wasn't very open.
We'll just say bless you.
Thank you. Lloyd.
Nice.
So that was A and B next. I mean, unless
Yep,
anybody's got some serious concerns, that's what I wanted to report. I'll have those operating budgets for final approval in the consent agenda in the November meeting.
okay. And that'll be along with our resolution of fees.
Well, this doesn't really need to be, this won't take effect excuse me, this doesn't get adopted until January, the
Right.
January 1 meeting. The reason for bringing it to, this work session is to, alert you guys that there are a few changes. The first one on page 2, or the first couple on page 2 is under the rental. And that is in line with the makeup of the increase to paying Townsend and Range for rental inspections. We increased our charge to our landlords per dwelling for the first inspection, and then follow in suit with that contract. And then on page 4, I added 2 additional items. Item number 90 under miscellaneous. I'm adding a charge for color copies.
Yep.
Instead of just a black and white charge, because we have been making copies for the public, and I want to make sure that we're revenuing that. It's not a ton, but I would like to state that. And then, in line with the clubhouse rental, going up to $250. I noted that in this as well.
Because
We need to.
it was expressed that it was not anywhere near enough for the amount of time people were using. It was not,
Oh,
it
absolutely.
was not washing out,
No,
and I'm gonna agree that it definitely needed. to go up.
absolutely.
At this time, I would just like to open the conversation if there is any other services and fees that the council wants to have conversation about increasing. We can bring this forward into the November work session for additional conversation before the January meeting if you'd like.
How's Josh feel about any of these? Does he have an opinion as to, are we charging enough, or
We
is it,
can't
are
increase,
fines enough?
we can increase our fines past what Minnesota statutes are for these,
So-
so, and you may not remember this. I don't know at what point we did it when Jace was chief, Max, but he did do a pretty big deep dive into state statute for those fees that we charge compared to what we were, and we can't exceed what the state does. So where we have those fines is where we can, and that's it. We cannot exceed what the state does.
Only $25 for littering.
Per occurrence, though, you gotta prove it.
I like this one, $60 for cruising.
Yeah, you can cruise
No, you can't.
Can't-
$60.
you can't cruise.
for $60. You can take it.
All right, well, I mean, if there's nothing really that,
I think are you looking at like licensing changes or?
Well, that's typically where we'd add
Where we-
them, yes, Lori.
Yeah.
Yeah,
or subtract,
Yep.
whatever. You know, how much per dog,
yeah, I mean, that's one of our things that we don't do, is we don't charge much for a dog license, but
because we like people to just do it.
took the words right out of my mouth. I just want compliance.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty hard to enforce something you don't have
It's
the ability to enforce,
impossible.
it's hard. Now, if we could license bunnies, that'd be even better. Boy, we'd make a killing on that. There's a lot of bunnies in the town. Yep.
I found
It's a couple coyotes too. in
That's
case you-
what
in
makes
case
it
you
one
wonder.
bunny.
I have very few rabbits now, yeah.
Between the hawk and the coyote.
I thought once we get the dog, and we have a large dog,
Uh,
I thought for sure we'd like increase that bunny population.
No, I don't see anything else that You know. Open burning permits for $10, huh?
They're not supposed to, yeah. Campfires are different.
You.
Won't get me started.
Mhm.
Well, I'm about to, Brian, it sounds like we're just about to you. Well, no, we got one more, don't we?
Got one more.
Yeah, does anybody have anything for the
No,
fees and? I think. That's not the place to. Try to make your.
No.
Anyway.
Really not. It's like the
Uh,
rental code, we charge what we get charged,
mhm.
you know? We're just an avenue.
Wayside Rest,
Okay, so this is being brought to the council for conversation. The last couple of chamber meetings. The members have secured Paul Bunyan Communications. Installing Wi-Fi down at the tourist information booth, and they're not charging the chamber the setup or anything to have it down there. So our farmers market people, you know, when Wood Carvers is there, all those people have Wi-Fi down there. I mean, Ron, you said you get it at your house, right?
Well, I see it on my list, but
But you don't pick it?
there's only a dot. It's the
Oh.
weakest you could possibly have and still have it appear, and that's only if I'm in the corner of the living room, I'm the recliner, and this is showing. So-
Outside.
So that was the beginning of the conversation. Once that got secured, I, at one of these meetings said, hey, can we get a webcam now on our duck and stream that on the chamber's website? Like you can see Paul and Babe on the chamber's website or on the city's website. So you can see our duck all year round. And that's where the conversation started. Jake Lean, because he works for Paul Bunyan, brought at the last meeting back some report to the chamber members. And what he stated is, yes, this could be done. We have a couple of options. The chamber has a couple of options and they wanted to bring it forward to the city because it's on city property. That we could get a video camera designated on a YouTube channel so that, you know, it's a constant streaming of our duck down there. But if we wanted to, we could also do recording, and there's a security level to it and more costs to locate bore, put the cable in, purchase equipment and so forth to it. If the chamber and the city so chose to have this as an option. Keep in mind, the original conversation was to focus on one area of the Wayside Rest, which is our biggest draw, and have that as a focal point to draw traffic and exposure to Blackduck. But at the last chamber meeting, security was like this great conversation. All of a sudden, everybody's like, yeah, we can see who's going to the bathroom. And I'm like, no, we don't want that. So you can't. You have a narrow view of what a webcam can actually focus on. It's not a panoramic. But all of the chamber members at this last meeting said, we really need to get the council involved because obviously it's on city property. You know, there's some additional money involved. Obviously, if the city wanted it, there's got to be a shared financial.
I was one of the security guesses.
And so that's where I'm at. This conversation has to continue here before the chamber's okay with doing it because they know where their where their authority stops and the city starts.
The original thought was behind it, if we're gonna be having a webcam up there anyway, why not have it recording? Instead of just broadcasting, but. I don't know what the expense would be.
So this would be installed at.
What was it?
At a location other than the current install from Paul Bunyan that was at no cost, right?
That is correct. The camera would have to be somewhere close to where the duck is.
Yeah, so that's,
Most likely where the power light comes in, would be my thought.
So the current install is at the tourist information booth, is that right?
Correct,
The hardware and the Wi-Fi and everything
correct.
now? So the boring and cable that they're talking about would be from that building over to where it needs to be.
It would most likely be from a power source. And my guess is I don't know if it would really come from the tourist information booth, but probably the other power source that's close to the restroom facility, Ron,
Yeah.
on the other side of the
Wouldn't you
garden.
have, there would be no cable or for the video, that would be Wi-Fi as well.
Would the camera be Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
Yes, on the internet level, I believe it would be, but
Okay.
if it's security camera footage that's being recorded, that's a little bit different setup on the back end.
So you'd have to have a recorder located somewhere.
I think it would be hosted by Paul Bunyan Communications, if I understood Jake correctly. So it would be clouded. Honestly, I'm not really in favor of security myself. I think it opens up a whole host of issues that administratively, I don't want to be in charge of. Because somebody's gonna have to keep that someplace. I mean, it's much like hosting the security footage we have at the pond. It's only on file for 21 days. And that's the extent of its backup. And that puts, you know, it's a good and a bad thing, you know, but if you're worried about property damage, that's one thing, but if you're also curious to know who was downtown on the wayside at 2 a.m. in the morning, that's a whole different thing.
Well, to me, it'd be property damage.
Right, and we have problems with the toilets getting smashed.
I just don't think that the security camera is gonna get that far, you guys. If the intention is for it to be on the duck, it's gonna be on the duck. If it's gonna be for security, it's gonna be more
I
than
can
a
remember
camera.
somebody whipping donuts in the grass down
It's gonna be more than one
there,
camera.
you know, and other things, stuff
Well, I
like
mean,
that.
it's gotta be somewhere where it can't get damaged or it's really hard to get to. And I think we talked about it once, didn't we, Mike?
I think we've kind of talked.
Didn't we talk about putting it on top of a pavilion or something? That one-
Run it up a pole, a pole over there that. I think,
But if we don't have an interest in security, that's fine too.
Well, what I don't understand is for the streaming of the duck, if you're gonna mount the camera on a pole where there's already power, what's the locate board and install cable part? I assume that was cable for the transmission of something.
I think that that's for security.
Oh.
I don't have a full quote yet. Jake is putting that together. If I do, when I do get it, because that was just last Wednesday, I can forward on for you. So that would be a little bit more clear, Ron.
Okay.
Yep. I think I requested both a non-security quote and regular quote.
Oh, that's one of those things. Hey, there's a camera down here. Maybe we shouldn't screw around down here.
yeah,
They don't even know it's a security camera, though.
You know,
Oh, there's a
and you-
camera down here, it's live streaming, you don't know that.
you're 100% right. Okay, you're 100% right. So, but I would like to see. If, you know, since Jake's gonna be doing the quote anyway. For the chamber. I'll see it anyhow, but
Okay. So you're not ruling it out. You'd like to
I'm
know
not
what the
ruling it
full
out.
costs would be involved.
correct.
Okay.
And no, if you're hanging out at the pavilion at 2 a.m., Christina, I'm not gonna say anything.
Parking your car.
That's whatever.
working on.
All right,
Moving on.
moving on. Thank you.
All right.
Right.
So. All right. So the last thing, I wanted to discuss was just a recap of the, fire protection area contract, or excuse me, agreement that was discussed on October 19th, last Thursday, with the towns. What I provided to you guys was a copy of the agreement with some amended language, which is also being sent out to the townships. And then, the biggest conversation, which is adding language to, the payment calculation. So historically, when this budget is presented and the formula is created for the towns to see what they have to pay, the payable values of the market value of estimated market value of each township only includes the buildings without exempt value. Okay. And historically, it's been that way because we can't tax exempt property. Obviously, they don't pay into the levy, right? So one of the towns asked at one of the meetings if that language could be added and considered in this new agreement. So this was half the meeting on Thursday night. I provided a sample of what that budget could be if exempt property was added. And that's the last attachment. Just gonna move this up a little bit. And knowing a couple of points for this council is really important, because what did we just do at the beginning of 23? Anyone? We annexed, we annexed in city property into the city of Blackduck.
Right, no, we did,
Otherwise, it was in Hines Township, right?
right.
Okay, so what happened now is you compare the budget for the city with the exempt property and the non-exempt property to what we've already approved for next year's budget, because obviously we can't do anything for 24. And the cost share for Blackduck goes up. So you might say to yourself, well, why didn't we include this before? And because I've gotten that question, obviously they don't pay into it, so we don't include it into the formula. But obviously your fire department's not gonna go put out a fire at Good Samaritan if something happens at the nursing home, right? Which is an exempt piece of property. They're not gonna respond to the school if there's a fire there, because they're an unbiased department, right? They're gonna put a fire out no matter what. But what the towns discussed Thursday night was they wanted to take this information back to their boards for additional conversation to see if that language is something they want to see in this updated contract. And I wanted to make sure, because Max had asked me to bring this to you guys, that you guys were aware of where the levy would go for the charge for the city if it changed. So there's two folds to this. I mean, if you look at that percentage of total evaluation column, the way the contract reads is the weighted vote, if you will, participation of town is based upon the percentage of total evaluation. So much like this council, a quorum is 3 of 5 people. Well, with the towns, a quorum is a percentage over, around 60%. So we use this percentage evaluation for our attendance. So if we have Hines, Blackduck, Hagelei, and one other town present at a meeting, we have a quorum. Then we can present it, and we can actually do business. So what happens by changing this is our valuation of participation goes up from 15 or 16 to 24. So we would pretty much have a quorum with only Blackduck and Hines.
Blackduck and Mines is real close.
Yeah, which to me can be a disservice because we don't always get. We never get all 11 participants present at a fire protection meeting. We might now,
The other, yeah, continue.
but Brian is here to speak on behalf of the department. And Max had requested the full board be aware that this language might get voted on. There's a subsequent follow-up meeting in December. To decide if this language is gonna move forward.
Because it's not it's not Brian's decision or my decision, it would be up to the rest of the townships and how they vote.
Right.
So, I mean, while no one could fault any one of the townships, even if in fact their percentage were to go down, you know, by voting to have Blackduck pay a bigger share. Yeah.
Their representation percentage within
It changes.
would go down.
Mhm.
So they're saving money, yes, but they're also their representation because that's what it's based on, like Christine said.
And
I don't really even like the fact, I mean, the savings, you know? I would like to see.
excuse me,
We're doing a propane tank fire. You can follow on this or not.
Okay.
Copy, thank you.
so
I would like to see more township participation. I mean, we do get 3 or 4 and plus the city max or. So we do have quorum, which is good. There's been times where we. You know, I just kind of, they take the steady as it goes approach. We usually see the same individuals. They're usually pretty involved. They save a little bit of money, but then they get less representation. It's a quite substantial increase, I think, for Blackduck. Obviously, we have the most
Mhm.
non-taxable property, but then,
But that's what
That's the-
cities end up
that's-
absorbing anyway.
exactly.
It doesn't
and
matter
I
where
don't
you
think
go.
from a fire department standpoint that we're gonna say, oh, well, we need to collect that. That's something that the fire department has no interest in doing. We respond, like Christina said, we don't care what your tax status is. We're gonna respond. I think though, it is important, like Max said, it is important because it's a substantial amount. That Blackduck would go up. You know, that's not just something
was it
that,
9-10,000?
It was, well, from almost 27 or almost 18 to 27, so. About
Yeah.
9 grand.
yeah, we also have to keep in mind that. You know, the village of Ten Strike, or the city of Ten Strike, they also are in that, then
They're going up with it because they have $1 million with their church.
yeah, so they would see an increase. All the other ones, I believe, went down. Heinz, I believe, went down the least. We're
They
still,
did,
Hines also has, don't they have the Presbyterian church
I believe so, yes.
yeah, they do.
and town hall,
They have a cemetery too.
cemetery?
Yeah.
My problem with it was trying to. As suggested, was passing this on as a fee
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna do
to,
I don't
To
think we
the-
wanna do that.
to these nonprofits.
I don't think you can.
yeah, I don't think we have that option, so.
It was, I'm just repeating what was said at the meeting. Because if that were the case, then I'd like to talk with the federal government about covering everything in the Chippewa.
Right. Right. Yeah, you know, there's always 2 sides to it, but from my standpoint. If the townships, that's the direction they wanna go. You know, then we can.
I don't know how likely it is. I'm not a fortune teller, so
Right,
it can go however, and I'm just wanting everybody to know. We're looking at an increase. And it's gotta be funded somehow.
and I think we did set something for December, correct?
We did,
Yes.
we did set a follow-up meeting December 14th, but it'll be at 7 PM. At City Hall for the towns. I have their packets ready to go with the minutes from Thursday. And an invite for them to come back and try to vote on this, because ultimately. I would like to see the towns approve this by January 1, so that they can get approved at their annual meetings in March. So that when the existing contract expires March 31st, April 1st, we have a seamless transition, because townships are on different governing calendars than the cities are.
Yeah, so it'd be for the 25. What they'd be voting on,
Technically, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
because 24 is set.
yeah, the budget is set for 24.
Yeah.
But if we went and added this language in here, it could not take effect until the 25's budget.
Correct.
Just because they've already approved what we have. So I'm doing it based off of how the contract existingly reads. The other two big points that were discussed was the annual capital replacement fund. We left the $30,000 into there, going into the department reserve fund. Only one township asked for feedback as to a plan for that cost share for 10 years. And ultimately, we're looking at engine 2's replacement is what Brian stated. And then, of course, I just said that the term number 5 on page 3 would remain at another 10 years. So this renewed contract wouldn't expire until 2034. But I think the exempt language is my biggest point to
Yes,
the board that I wanted everybody to be aware of and to get feedback from.
are we asking our attorney on this, or?
I did send it. I did send for some feedback today, yes.
Okay.
But to be honest with you, when I sent for our original contract and
Because
stated that he didn't understand why we were already not including exempt property in our formula to begin with, so. Unbeknownst to him, how we've done it for the current 10 years, that would be part of the formula anyway. It's just when I took over in 14, that's what the subsequent agreement had in it, and the way that the formula was being run was you didn't include the exempt property valuations in the cost. So if there's no comments on that, Max, then that's all I have.
Yeah, I
New
just-
business.
yeah, I guess worry's not the right term, but. You know, everybody can think, oh, there's no way you can levy or there's no way you can. Tax or put a fee on it, and yeah, about the time you think there's no way possible, and all of a sudden there's something like. But I just didn't want to get surprised by it.
I think we meet in December, hopefully things will
Yeah.
be ironed out enough that we can give them what they want and they can take it to them.
I
And
think
we'll
so.
be happy.
If anybody else has anything on the fire stuff, or? All in favor? Yeah. I thought so. Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Who was I talking to?